gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe. Here, in this great hall of the Signal Watch, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Join us as we discuss all manner of topics across the multiverse of comic books, history, creators, storylines, movies, and more. The Signal Watch podcast presents Kryptonian Thought Beast, a comics podcast series dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me today is
Stuart Ward.
Stuart, welcome back.
Hey.
And we're talking superheroes today. Technically making this a Kryptonian Thought Beast podcast. I'd forgotten that we were supposed to be branding the superhero stuff Kryptonian Thought Beast. I remembered that yesterday out of the blue. But it's we're talking about which film?
Today we're going to talk about 2022's 2022. It's been in development for so long I lost track.
Yeah.
Black Adam, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and the hierarchy of the podcast is about to change.
I don't know if I've seen a movie show up with this much unwarranted bravado in a decade.
It was quite the intro. It was almost the nearly decade long development of this movie, I think, or maybe longer than a decade if you go back, maybe pre The Rock stuff. I mean, it sort of reminds me of like the smack talk that happens before a wrestling match.
Everything about this has ties back to like the Carnival Barker shit of pro wrestling in video games. Like it was amazing watching this getting going. I mean, I first heard about them wanting to do Black Adam when The Rock got attached to it. And me going, does he know who Black Adam is? Like, that's a curious choice.
I don't think so. I think that because my memory is back in like the, I don't know, early 2000s, mid 2000s, the Rock had, or no, it would be like in the 2010s. It would be after the MCU kind of gets going. The Rock starts making noises about wanting to play a superhero, because I think he saw which way the wind was blowing.
Yeah. Right.
And he, for a while, was trying to kind of get some momentum going behind playing John Stewart, the Green Lantern. Right. And there was I remember a bunch of tweets back in the day where he was tweeting about that. And I think at some point his focus changed because they asked him to play Captain Marvel, right? And then he kind of said, "Well, I want to play the badass version, right, of Captain Marvel,"
right?
Which is, of course, Black Adam. And so it kind of changed focus that way. And for a while, he was attached to be a part of the Shazam movie, right, which came out in, was that 2018, I think?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But at some point, early in the development or before filming started, at least, he, separated himself, remained as producer on Shazam, but separated, made the deal that, I'm still going to play Black Adam. We're still going to connect the movies down the line, but, you're going to have your own villain in the first movie, and and Black Adam's going to be introduced in his own movie. And then, at some point down the line, we'll connect them up. But really, his focus was going to be on establishing Black Adam as, its own marquee character, because I think The Rock knew correctly that the center of the DC universe was Superman. He's been talking about Superman ever since he announced this project, right? The first time I remember really the momentum getting going back in like 2016 when he Instagrammed a photo with Henry Cavill where they're like having drinks. They're like, "Hey, it's Superman and Black Adam coming to you soon." Right. Oh my God. Yeah. And he'd been teasing that whole, the hierarchy of the DC universe is going to change. Black Adam is going to fight Superman as everything is leading up to this. Right.
Yeah. It's the cage match at WrestleMania. Everyone looked forward to it. Right.
So, he, as I say, I used to get a lot of flack in the 90s for saying that Superman is the center of the DC universe. And one thing that the movies have done correctly, one of the few things, is they started their DC universe, the new movie universe, with Superman. And I think The Rock correctly identified that if he wanted to be a big name, he needed to be, and he's going to be an anti-hero or a villain, he needed to be somebody who could go toe-to-toe with Superman. And so he's been teasing that match for 5 years, and putting a significant amount of his online promotion into that, because The Rock is relentless with self-promotion.
Yeah,
and it's just been nonstop. I'm going to get Superman in this project. It's going to be Black Adam versus Superman. And then, famously talked about how he, had to kind of strong arm DC into rehiring Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill comes out and says, "I am back as Superman, everybody." Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie. And then, a few weeks later, it all kind of crumbles down around them and it gets canceled. So there never is going to be
a wild ride to watch from the outside, and not particularly having a whole lot invested in Black Adam or The Rock or Henry Cavill returning. And me and Stuart are the two people you're going to meet who love Superman more than is reasonable. And I should, and I always thought Henry Cavill was a fine choice. I think I've made that qualifier many, many, many times on this podcast. But watching it from the outside with all the Black Adam stuff of just year over year and I was saying Dwayne Johnson is not going to do this. If he was going to do it, it's going to happen. He's running around making his 8th Fast and the Furious movie, spinoff, whatever. He's making Jungle Cruise. He's doing everything but making this movie, and I don't get it. But he kept talking about it. And if you read the JSA comics, so Black Adam wasn't really a thing until the 90s. He popped up, I want to say, during Jerry Ordway's Power of Shazam run. I think that is kind of when he became a thing. He may have existed before that in the 60s and 70s. I'm really not sure. I feel like I remember him being around back then, but I really remember him in Jerry Ordway's stuff. And he was an interesting villain in those comics, but he was basically just a crook that for some reason had Shazam powers and caused trouble for Shazam. And it's a good story. I totally recommend it to find that Power Shazam trade if you can. But really what they're referring to in this movie is it's pieces of what Jeff Johns and Dave Eaglesham and some other people were doing with the JSA run from 2000 to 2006 or so, where they kind of established all this stuff with Kahndaq, and they kind of completely reframed who Black Adam was. He's not just this guy who was an archaeologist with Billy's dad. He has this whole like history in ancient times, in kind of sword and sandals times. But there's a whole rich tapestry to that they kind of built into the comics over the years that this movie absolutely pisses away. Just absolutely. I mean, I will say this about the movie, and if you think we're just going to hate on it, this movie does some fascinating stuff. It just tucks it in there in between really dumb things that they're otherwise doing. Like I don't necessarily think that everything that went into this movie was wrong-headed. I think that there's some really interesting stuff, but I think the execution of what they did was hilariously bad. I felt like I was watching video game cut screens for literally 2 hours. It was a very strange movie to watch.
So should we do the plot synopsis real quick?
Yeah, so South Coast Media sponsors us, so we need to do the South Coast Media plot synopsis. So Stuart, I'm going to let you take this on.
Oh my gosh,
I've seen this movie 1.3 times because I had to rewatch the last 45 minutes to remember what happened, because I've been messing with my dog during the first time I watched it. But your child has been watching this movie over and over, is my understanding.
So yeah, I've seen it once all the way through in the theater. And then, my youngest, it's like his favorite movie right now. He's got a poster in his room. He's watched it, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 times since it became available on digital. And so I've seen it. He watched it at a sleepover a couple weeks ago. So I've seen scenes from it, bits and pieces as it's playing in the house. So this will be as I remember.
Sure.
But as I remember, the movie set in the fictional Middle Eastern country of Kahndaq, which it seems to be like a cross between Iraq and Wakanda, right? It's Wakanda in the sense that they have this like mysterious stuff there
that everybody was made up for the movie.
That's totally made up. Yeah.
That was not in the comics. That Kahndaq was essentially the stand-in for Iraq in DC Comics for decades. Yeah.
Right. But in the movie world, there's this mysterious there's this unobtainium stuff there.
Yeah.
And because of a bunch of sort of referencing real world politics, war is happening. Now the country has been taken over by mercenaries. Did I get that right?
By Intergang, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Intergang, right. Okay. Which is like it seems to be playing like a lot like a corporate sponsored, army.
Are you not familiar with Intergang?
I'm familiar with Intergang, but the Intergang from the movie was not familiar to me at all.
Right. Yeah, Intergang's kind of DC's all-purpose. We need to have the mafia, and we need to be able to also give them lasers. And so they show up in various ways in almost all DC media sooner or later. And just as a quick primer, this is just going to be spoilers ahoy. In the comics, the Intergang was specifically tied to Metropolis, and it was sponsored basically by Darkseid. It was how he was like basically testing the waters on Earth. He had Bruno Mannheim as his central dude, and it was like giving him apocalyptic weapons and stuff, and trying to get a foothold. As well as he had a relationship with who was the WGBS guy?
Morgan Edge.
Morgan Edge.
Yeah.
So there were all these kind of like connections that were going on with Intergang, but Bruno Mannheim was kind of the main guy. and it's kind of been exploited. But definitely when I was watching the movie and they're like, oh, Intergang has taken over, I was like, oh, they haven't given up the ghost on all the Apocalypse stuff with the DC universe. They're still,
I guess it really more felt like to me like they just needed a name, and so they just grabbed a name of like an evil.
I took the flying motorcycles as signs of the apocalyptian assistance, but I agree. I think for the general audience, and that's kind of the thing with this movie, is it uses like iceberg levels of what's going on with these characters and ideas from the comics, and it kind of has all the tips of the icebergs touch, if I can say that and not sound filthy. The tips touch, and it's
not that kind of movie.
Watch all of it, like knowing everything that's behind all this stuff, and the movie just flat out refuses to address.
Does not tell you. No, it doesn't. It feels, a lot of it feels like a payoff that's completely unearned. But that's getting ahead of myself. So, Intergang. I mean, for the movie though, to me it plays like Blackwater, if you will, like a that's what it seemed like shorthand for, like a private army, that's corporately owned. But of course, in this case, I guess it would be criminally owned. But in any case, it's a bunch of bad guys, like a paramilitary organization of bad guys have taken over a country that's war torn. And in the middle of this, there's an archaeological site that's being explored by a single mother who has a young son who's very much into superheroes, which this movie does the same thing as Shazam, where it treats superheroes, which are real, the same way that we treat superheroes, which are comic book characters and movie characters, where they have comic books of the superheroes and like kids with posters in their rooms and toys of the superheroes who are real people, which is confusing to me. But at any rate,
I find that confusing. And
it
feels much more like they feel like sports figures or something to kids.
Yeah, I suppose so. But yeah, so the mother, who's some sort of scholar archaeologist, has found this secret site. What was the thing that they were after? Some kind of crown of something. They weren't after.
It was the crown of Sabak, which
the crown of Sabak, right? Okay, so they weren't actually after Black Adam. Black Adam was imprisoned in this ancient, burial site, and he gets woken up by accident, and as he wakes up, he causes all this havoc. It turns out he has, superpowers on the level of Shazam, who we've seen, prior in movies, and that wakes up now the Justice Society back in America. They're like, hey, this new unknown character with, Superman level powers has showed up, and we need you to go and contain it. And the next few hours, it felt like, of the movie were various misunderstandings and smackdowns between superheroes trying to contain Black Adam, and him showing them that he, can't be contained and can't be controlled and is his own, doesn't follow any flag and so forth. And at some point the kid gets in danger, and that gives Black Adam, something at least to do, a cause, right, to rescue the kid. Oh gosh.
So here's the chain of events that occurs.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is probably way too convoluted.
No, that's fine. But so the whole thing is that there's this crown of Sabak, and they know they need to keep it away from Intergang, which is fronted by someone who is posing as a friend of the Pretty Lady. You have two females in it. We'll call it Pretty Lady and Pretty Girl. And the crown if they get it, they know something bad will happen if Intergang gets it, but they just know it's the MacGuffin they need to keep away. So the mom just wants her kid back. So they go to the secret mine headquarters of Intergang, and she's like, fuck it, take the crown. I don't care. I just want my kid back. But what the guy really wants, as they figure out, is he wants to die. If he's wearing the crown and he dies, he will come back as Sabak the demon. He's basically like anti-Shazam. He just looks incredibly like what I would have drawn as a demon in like 8th grade.
But that's so weird because I thought Black Adam was supposed to be anti-Shazam.
Yeah, well,
Anyway,
this movie does not give a shit about anything. Like
I did think Sabak looked kind of cool though.
I mean, he looks like a metal album cover. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Credit where it's due. It's just like, DC just has this amazing like inability to realize your villains need to be interesting. And Marvel like knew that from jump, right? I mean, even Captain Marvel like has this incredibly complex villain thing going on. And this thing has like, it's some dude who looks like every terrorist from every movie. And then he, puts on a hat and he becomes, the Tim Curry from
So
Legend.
Have you seen the live action Aladdin? Sorry to sidebar.
No.
So the guy who becomes Sabak is also that same actor is the guy who plays Jafar in live action Aladdin. And his story is almost exactly the same. He's after some magical thing that will turn him into a big evil version of the hero who will then be defeated.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Spoiler alert. But Sabak is
sorry. 30-year-old spoiler.
None of this actually matters, though. I mean, what the people are after doesn't matter. What actually happens doesn't matter. What matters is that Black Adam shows up and he kicks ass and he's awesome.
And he tells people who are kind of like the Justice League, but we can't afford the Justice League, that he is ungovernable.
He's his own master. He bows to no one. And that, to me, they drive home that point so often that it just became kind of tiresome.
It's exhausting. It's He sounds like the dude who would be like living on your sofa telling you about how he's a revolutionary.
That's right.
Like
he's like Brad Pitt from True Romance.
Yeah, 100%. Like
that's right, man.
Or the guy who drives like a really big pickup truck with an American flag in the back, and he's like, "Oh, I know I'm a real patriot. I know what's going on." Like it has that vibe to it through the whole thing. And then at the end, they all sit around talking about how he uniquely is dark in the DC universe.
Yeah.
The thing that this universe has taken criticism from since 2013 of being way too dark. And they're in a movie that just basically feels like a bunch of video game shit in the way it treats violence. And then they're like, oh, but it's his darkness. And I was like, you guys don't even understand your own movie. That's not the interesting thing happening here at all.
If I were a JSA fan, which I'm not, I've read DC Comics for a long time and I'm familiar with the JSA, but if I were a JSA fan, I'd be really upset with this movie. I am a JSA fan. I saw this coming from the minute they said the JSA was going to be in this, that it's The Rock. He's going to just basically have them there to be punching bags to show he's. Yeah. I mean, the reason he didn't want any established characters in there is because none of them matter. They're just there to show how weak and ineffectual they are next to Black Adam, who knows how to get shit done. Right.
Yeah.
And what's another funny thing to me, I have a thing. This is such a CW thing where superheroes stand around and call one another. They call themselves heroes. I can't stand it. I can't stand that shit. And they do that. They're like, yes, we are superheroes. Mm-hmm. If you want to be a hero, you can't kill bad guys. And I'm like, isn't this the same universe that opened with the very first movie, Man of Steel, that opened with, the pointedly the hero killing the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right.
And then followed up with Batman just murdering.
And then followed up with Batman just murdering tons of bad guys. Yeah, like it was no big deal. Like he was a serial killer. And now all of a sudden we're in a world where heroes, quote unquote heroes that label themselves as such, don't kill people. And it was so funny to me that I almost thought it was intentional. And so the first time I watched it, I kind of thought, wow, this movie is it's next level because it's making fun of the DC. I thought it was self-parody, right? And it sort of has this the JSA kind of has this Team America quality to it, where they think they're so awesome, and all they do is just go into the situation, in a foreign country where they're not wanted. They talk about what great, heroes they are, and then they fuck everything up. And I thought 100%. This is commentary, but yes. As I watch it again, I don't think it is commentary. I think it's just They don't understand what they're doing. The movie doesn't understand what it's doing enough to know how ridiculous this is.
No, it's American adventurism, like at its absolute worst, which I know like my Republican listeners right now are losing their minds. But if you want to see something cartoonish, that's an exemplar of why this is considered to be a problem for some people, like watch how much good the JSA ever did for Kahndaq before this, when they absolutely apparently could have flown in there at any point with god level powers and just mopped the floor with everybody, and they just didn't.
Yeah,
I guess it wasn't a problem for Amanda Waller, which fine, I guess, but that means what's the point of the JSA?
Well, in this universe, the JSA is completely doing the bidding of Amanda Waller.
Yeah,
right. They have no independence,
which is insane. When you go, we've also established these are characters who are like 100 years old. If they don't get into all this stuff with Hawkman, but they just show it instead of explaining anything that's going on. It's like, why does he live in a castle in, of all places, Louisiana?
Yeah. Because it's awesome. That's why.
How does he have something that's a hangar that's underground in Louisiana?
I think you're just supposed to read that as this guy is like James Bond level cool, and he has cool shit, and that's as deep as you're supposed to take it.
Well, yeah, and they go like, oh, this is all made out of nth metal. It was no explanation of what nth metal is, what Hawkman is, like where's Hawk Girl, like. And so if you know the comics, it's both like, I can fill in all the blanks. What the hell is the general audience thinking?
I mean, it just doesn't matter is the thing.
Yeah, and
because Hawkman is just,
I came down on it.
He's just there to be humiliated in pointless fight after. I mean, how many times did he fight The Rock? Was there 2 or 3 fights?
There's at least, I'd say like 3.5. Yeah. It
was ridiculous. It got to the point where, I mean, I think I was looking at my watch at one point. Usually when I go to the movies, and my son will ask to go to the bathroom at the worst time. Always he's just like, I got to the bathroom. He doesn't want to go by himself. I have to go with him. So I'm like running to the bathroom. And I think he had to ask to go to the bathroom. And it was right when there was another fight starting between Hawkman and The Rock. And I'm like, yep, that's cool. Let's just see if we can get a refill on our popcorn while we're out there. Yeah.
Let's call your mom. What's on the right? Yeah. Let's call grandma. Yeah, and they came so close to making Hawkman not look like a doof. But then they put these extended wings on his helmet.
The wings look ridiculous. The CGI wings, you can't tell where they're attached. They kind of float around.
Yeah.
It's bad. And so of all the so you have Hawkman, you've got Wind Girl.
Cyclone.
I didn't recognize her. Is she an actual character? They just make her up?
No, she's real, but she was from like the very tail end of the Jeff Johns stuff, and she was in fact in issues that were around all the Kahndaq stuff. Her and Atom Smasher.
She's so useless in this movie.
She is the granddaughter of Ma Hunkel.
Okay.
If you know Red Tornado from the original.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, but she's. I just it boggles my mind that like you have the whole DC universe to choose from, And fine, if that's who you want to do, but
I think they
she's
chose
nothing.
girl, and the JSA actually has really good female characters, and they were like, no, you can't use Power Girl because too complicated. Can't use Huntress because Batman. Can't use like they're like when they got like, what are you gonna end up at, like Liberty Bell? Like, I don't know. Like,
I guess it's just so the opposite of how I felt about all the character choices in, say, the Suicide Squad, which were so, even if they were ones that were like that I didn't recognize, they were so clever and quirky that I just went with it.
Yeah.
But this was just so bland and useless.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
she looked like she was doing some sort of like a glam shoot every time she went into her slow motion powers, and then nothing would happen.
she threw poles around.
She threw poles around that didn't land anywhere useful.
No, she just threw them around. You know, that's a thing to do. The in Dr. Fate, I mean, like, we're totally handicapped by the fact multiple Doctor Strange movies have been out. Dr. Fate is one of the earliest superheroes to appear in comics. He's like, it's like you have Dr. Occult is in theory the first costumed hero, and then you have pretty much like Superman, and within like months you have Dr. Fate. And Dr. Fate is just weird. Like he is fundamentally a supporting character because he's so weird. He's really hard for people to kind of just get their grip around. And then they do absolutely nothing with it in the movie. He's a guy who is at war with the law of order, who lives in his hat, who constantly is like trying to either like erase his personality, or like there's always some shit going on with Naboo. And they just don't ever do. They were like, oh, he acts different when he's in his helmet, and then they never did anything with it. They never have Naboo have a voice. They never like did anything that makes Dr. Fate remotely interesting.
No, he was a waste. It was a shame, because I actually like that casting choice. I like Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
I thought he would have made a great Dr. Fate, but I'm sure that the only reason he said yes to it was because his spoiler alert, of course, his character dies in the movie, so he's not committing to anything more than one movie.
Well, and then he's constantly taking off the helmet, and I'm like, so it's just proximity to the helmet?
No, that's not this movie though. That's like every superhero movie that has a mask now.
Well, but he has to have the helmet on for the powers to work. That's the whole thing. Literally the whole thing. And he doesn't want to put the helmet on. Then he's fighting with the Lord of Order, right? And it's just it was.
I didn't quite understand his powers either, because I remember there's a part where he's fighting Sabak. Dr. Fate is fighting Sabak late in the movie as we're like waiting for Black Adam is like on his way, right?
Yeah.
And so all of the JSA are just one by one going up against Sabak and getting defeated. And you know that they're just, killing time until Black Adam gets there. But Dr. Fate says something like, I don't have the power to defeat you or whatever. And then he goes and right after he says that, he does this really impressive thing where he like makes himself into like 50 different Dr. Fates, where he's like physically restraining him from different, they're not illusions. It's not like 49 illusions and one real one. They all have the physical capabilities, right?
Yeah.
Of a superhero, and they're all around him. And I'm like, wow, how does he not have the ability to restrain? I mean, if he could just multiply himself like this, seems like he does. But then somehow, of course, because the movie needs him to fail, he still fails.
Well, it's also a movie that thinks like he's going to use his incredible wizard powers to punch a demon. Like that's
he does. He creates these kind of cool illusions where Sabak seems lost for a minute, right? And he's falling, and then he's falling in a different direction, and he can't tell which Dr. Fate is real. And it seems like Dr. Fate could at least contain him that way by just confusing him enough that he could be in a perpetual prison where every door he goes into opens another door. Every door makes him fall or something like that, and that way you wouldn't have to overpower him. You just confuse him. But it didn't seem like they were really tapping into the potential of his power there. It just seemed like a foregone conclusion that he was going to have to lose because Sabak is stronger than he is. And that's that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, the reason he can't be a lead character in comics is because his powers are undefined. Like he's straight up like
kind of like the Spectre.
Happen in the moment, Dr. Fate may or may not be able to do, depending on the writer and whatever. Like Dr. Fate is 90% about mood and iconography, and there's a reason DC can't seem to keep a Dr. Fate title going. So
but also there seemed to be a thing that they wanted us to buy between Hawkman and Dr. Fate, where these guys are old chums, right? They're like they're war vets together or something. And so that when Dr. Fate finally bites the dust, Hawkman gets to, he screams out in agony and stuff. And it all just seems so forced to me. I was like, you did not earn any of that, No,
none of that. Nothing in the movie is earned. Full stop. Like, there's not an emotion that you're going to have watching this movie other than, like it.
I mean, a few times I thought, oh, that looks cool.
Yeah.
That looks cool.
It has some neat visuals.
Yeah.
But so in the comics, the basic story is, I'm trying to remember because I did not go back and review the comics, but Black Adam's a known quantity in the DC universe, has been for a bit. They know he's the anti-Shazam, whatever. And somehow we learn like his origins are actually an Agent Kondak, and he decides basically like he's mad about, and it may have been that Intergang took over his country. I honestly don't remember. It was something along those lines. And he just basically says, great, let's go clean it up, JSA. And they're like, no, we can't do that. We can't like go dictate how countries are being governed. That's out of our jurisdiction. And he's like, well, maybe for you, I'm Black Adam. And he goes and basically wipes the floor with everybody. And he's now the Emperor of Kondak. And everyone's real happy because he stopped the interlopers, right? And the JSA shows up to go see what's up. And some of them stay. I won't say who, because there's never going to be a Black Adam sequel.
No, so, you can go ahead.
Yeah, like Atom Smasher, who's a fairly young hero in the context of those comics, is like, yeah, cool. I think you're doing good for these people. Like I've always been a bit of a screw up as a JSA, or maybe I can help here. And they're all like, wait, what? You're staying? And like one or two others stay too. And it's this whole thing of like, I can, and therefore I will actually show and exercise my power to help people in a way that is not being, my hands are not tied by the rules that you have self-imposed on yourselves because you all are from a superpower of a country. And, fundamentally, I am 4,000 years old. I'm not as down with democracy as all of you are. And there's all this stuff too of like, well, back in like ancient days, Hawkman and Nabu and Black Adam were all like hanging out as the Justice League of the time from like their various kind of Eastern countries of like they'd get together and, deal with whatever needed to get dealt with. So there was all that kind of stuff kind of baked in. There's like this rich tapestry that they kind of were building. And the story was really about like exploring the limits of power and all that. And this movie kind of touches on all of that.
Just barely.
But just barely. And that was the stuff I was like, if you guys had pulled that stuff to the front instead of worrying about how much of a badass we'd all think The Rock was by the end of the movie, like there's something inherently interesting there. There's something inherently interesting about someone who was not supposed to have these powers, who got them, feels shame about it. I don't like the reveal happening as the fourth telling of his origin or whatever in the movie. and this movie definitely falls into the same problem the original Suicide Squad movie has, where it just keeps telling you origins and keeps introducing people over and over. It's like, oh my God, how many, people do I have to meet in this dumb thing? And none of it matters, because it should just be The Rock versus Sabak, and that's it. But and they the things that they do bring up, like, I don't think actually exist. Like, there's no Rock of Finality. That's an inversion of the Rock of Eternity. Like, I don't, maybe it's in the comics, I don't know, but it just felt like, whatever, they can make up their movie universe however they want to. But I thought there was something inherently interesting in, I'm going to protect these people, y'all are not doing your job, and them having a feeling about it other than just staring at him and going, all right, I guess that's a thing. Like, that's a serious, like, if you want to talk about the center of power has shifted for the DCU, I don't know if the center of power shifted, but something interesting has shifted as far as like how you want to think about what a superhero can, or where a superpowered person can and would be on Earth if they didn't have Superman's constraints, like moral constraints of how he's going to use his power. And that's why the character's supposed to be interesting.
I guess the way that the movie handles it, though, I was a little bothered by the implication that, Black Adam defeats the bad guy. He runs Intergang out of the country, and then seemingly declares himself the new king, right? And there's no real reason to think that he's going to be a leader worth following. Like, well,
at the end of the movie, he actually says, no, I'm not going to do that, but I'll hang around as the protector. I'll basically be their atom bomb. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm sorry. I guess I remember.
No, that's fine. I mean, because it's like 2 seconds of the movie, and they don't say what will happen. He doesn't say, I love democracy, go make a democracy. Like, he just
guess what I remember more than him saying, no, I won't do it, then is him sitting on the throne.
Well, he then smashes the throne.
That's right. He smashes the throne.
Yeah. So, but in the comics, he's full on like, no, I'm just going to be in charge. Y'all, I remember how you run a country from 4,000 years ago. I'm going to do that shit again. So
it seems a little like, or at least the way I took it at the time, like with this and Aquaman both, like the Conanification of DC characters, like they're taking characters that are established as superhero, or in this case, an anti-hero, a villain.
I should be really clear. In the comics, he is never perceived as a hero.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Even in the series you're talking about.
I mean, they eventually do. He'll team up with them, but they're always like, I guess we need him.
Yeah.
Like, he's not like, robbing banks and shit. I mean, he's now the, just as Aquaman is the king of an empire, he's now the king of Kahndaq, or he's not anymore after the New 52 and all that. I don't know what his status is these days, but
he was I read the New 52 Shazam series, the mini series, and then the series that followed it, and he was pretty bad. He was pretty evil. Yeah. In that. I mean, he's like gonna kill a bunch of kids without much remorse, seemingly. So I guess what I'm saying is what the movie is doing, though, is it's taking a figure that's supposed to be heroic, I guess, and it's taking that strength is a good in and of itself message a little literally for me. I don't know, just watching my kid watch it it's not really delivering the kind of message that I would prefer, that he take away from say characters, using power, responsibly and things like that.
And to be clear, this is 100% aimed at kids. Like, we
absolutely,
haven't even talked about the squirrely 13-year-old who, like, is like, as Jamie called him, Poochie. Like, you know, he's got a skateboard.
He skateboards. That's
backpack
right.
full of comics, and he's like sticking it to the man, and
Yeah.
and he's the only one who understands, you know, Black Adam, and the only one that Black Adam cares about, and like it's insanely violent. Like I could not believe from the minute Black Adam shows up and murders a room full of people to then exiting the room to kill a battlefield full of people without questioning whether they're good or bad, whether what the objectives are. Like, he just straight up starts murdering people. He is a villain that this movie is pitched as a protagonist. Like, it doesn't really, like, he makes fun of Hawkman for like, oh, you'd let go of these guys and you know that they go toward. I was like, dude, you didn't know anything other than someone was like, oh my God, a flying man with lightning shooting out of his face, kill it. Like, which is a pretty reasonable thing to think, I think. And he just he shoves a grenade in someone's mouth. Like, it's
So yeah, it's that sort of unironic, unknowing wink way of using the anti-hero and using the well, you know, I'm what you're supposed to root for me just because I'm the strongest one.
Yeah,
right?
it's Commando. And it's there's a kid who's kidnapped. A big muscly guy is going to just plow his way through, you know, an occupying force of some kind. And the people who are not named are all NPCs who are fair game for hilarious modes of murder.
So I guess I'm not against that in general, because as you just name checked Commando, like I don't mind that as a trope in an action movie, but it seems like
those were rated R movies.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And also the other thing that I want in a movie that's like that is I want it to be, I guess, a little self-aware and a little bit more fun, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. Like, we realize this is ridiculous. And this movie not only takes itself way too seriously, but the lead character, I think, is just, he's humorless. You know, he's not even like an appropriate, I think, fit for The Rock. He's not a typical Rock character who kind of like quips as he, you know, punches the bad guys. He just kind of stands there and scowls, and he's not fun to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It was not fun watching this.
When I saw The Rock in the Fast and Furious movies, is kind of like my prototypical, you know, The Rock type character, where he's doing stuff like, I remember there's a bit where it's like, it's time to go to work and his arm is in a cast, right? Because of, you know, he broke it, you know, fighting a bad guy or something. And he just flexes his way out of the cast. Right. I mean, and it's awesome. And but it's done in such a way that, you know, it's ridiculous. The movie realizes it's ridiculous, but it's played kind of for laughs, but also you go with it. And there's nothing like that in Black Adam that makes me kind of like, oh, okay, it's ridiculous, but it's funny. I'm just going to go with it. You know?
Yeah, there's two beats that are the joke beats in this movie. And one is some stuff about sarcasm and the use of sarcasm. And they hit it like that same beat like 3 times in 5 minutes. And it's really out of place and awkward.
Oh yeah, that was sarcasm. So then
because they're making fun of the fact that he won't use a door. And the whole time, much like when I watched Aquaman, I was like, why, other than it's cool to burst through walls? It's not cool. It's cool to burst through a wall once for dramatic entrance. Constantly coming through walls when there is a window right there that is already open doesn't make any sense.
I think it's like a Family Guy joke where it's just the fact that it's not funny and it's going on for too long is what makes it funny. It's what it's supposed to be. And that's why I thought it anyway.
Well, they just get anyway. Dr. Fate says something about, oh, I guess they didn't have doors, and he's, oh, that was sarcasm anyway. And they keep hitting that note for like 5, and then they don't return to it. There's not like they get back to it at the end of the movie.
Which I mean,
there's the one time where he like flicks one of the motorcycle pilots like through the air, and then he goes, oh, he didn't make it. And it's kind of like the one time I kind of chuckled during the movie. Because Dr. Fate's like, you didn't kill that guy. We needed to ask him questions, and he's like, we didn't make it. And I'm like, that was he murdered that man. That's hilarious.
But yeah, I guess it's like in Deadpool, right? Deadpool kills a lot of people, and then he makes ridiculous, funny jokes and does impossible, ridiculous stuff, and you just kind of go with it. But Black Adam is just kind of a dick. I mean, he's not funny. He's not fun. When he's flying through walls. I mean, this is a guy who, before he had superpowers, he was just a guy, right? Yeah. He was a slave, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you realize that the person's wall you just went through is not like a rich person who can just go to, fix the other or move to the other room in their mansion or whatever. The time that he was fighting, one time he was fighting Hawkman, he like destroys the kid's room. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh, that's all that stuff. That's like he's like destroying his posters and his collectibles and stuff. And I'm like,
it's funny. Danny, I read Danny's post on this movie, and he said the one time I had an emotional response was my horror at seeing like Hawkman and Black Adam destroy the kid's collection.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, man, he's just being plain rude. Like there's no reason to be rude to these people and like destroy their house for no reason.
Yeah, it and the lady seems completely unfazed that like her home is.
And again, it seems so over the top that I almost thought this has got to be on purpose. This has got to be commentary, right? It's like he's this is commentary about how we like the superheroes are going in and destroying everything that they pretend to care about, just the same way that we like as a country we go and destroy things that we're saying that we're preserving, right, as a superpower. And no, I don't think that's what they were doing, but that's me giving the movie too much credit, I guess.
I think that's giving it way too much credit. I think Dwayne Johnson is probably a very nice man in some level. But I think you also get a little bit of a peek into who he is, because this movie is his baby, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the director of this movie is the same guy from Jungle Cruise, right?
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, it clearly seems like he kind of brought in his own team of people to do this. And I mean, what I was saying before, like his self-promotion machine is just absolutely relentless. He talked up this movie online and on, TV interviews and things as being, this is the phase 1 of the new DC universe. Like everything that had come before just didn't matter.
Now, it was terrifying because he kept saying that. And I'm like, how much do you have the Walter Hamada by the balls that
right.
that this is happening? Like, we already had this problem with someone who was a legitimate director. Like, you're a lot of things, Rock, but I don't like, if young Rock is any indication, I think we should not be letting you tell an epic tapestry of a megaverse like that.
Well, it's like, I mean, Aquaman made $1 billion, right? Yeah. I mean, granted, some of the movies have been not great, and there are some problems in the early building of the DC movie universe, now defunct DC universe. But just to come in and say to this, franchise, this is the new start of the franchise. This is now my franchise. It's a little arrogant.
Well, you just keep going. I am just a dude who watches movies, but I know that you're wrong. Like,
yeah,
this is absolutely, you are not in charge of anything. Like, they're not, Warner Brothers as an entity is not going to let you dictate how the DC universe spins out here.
As we saw.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like the order of events, as I remember it, is like, The Rock comes out, says, and for years that the hierarchy of the DC universe is going to change, right? Implying that he's now at the top. This is new now. This is the new phase 1 of the new DC universe. And then, like a week before the movie comes out, is when they assign WB Discovery assigns James Gunn and Peter Safran to take over the DC universe, right? And sort of like decide what's going to stay and what's going to go. And the movie comes out. It opens to below expectations box office, especially for a movie with a budget of like over $200 million. It has a second week drop of about 60%, which is generally means bad word of mouth, right? It has, mixed critical reaction. And then there's immediately this Deadline article that starts circulating that's like, oh, Black Adam is profitable actually, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was in like, I want to say late November, maybe a few weeks after the movie came out, long enough so that it was clear that it was not going to have legs, right? That it was not going to make its money back. This Deadline article starts circulating, and The Rock himself promotes it online. That's basically says, even though it's not going to make its money back in its initial theatrical run, magical accounting reasons mean that Black Adam is still going to be profitable and there's still going to be a sequel. And it was such this example of, naked PR as journalism that was laughable. Everybody online was laughing about it. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous, kind of embarrassing. And then, so that article comes out, and then I think it was, 2 or 3 weeks later, late December, when I remember they released a joint statement at the same time. James Gunn released a statement, and The Rock released a statement on all their social medias at the same time. Black Adam 2 is not going to happen. And it was just, my gosh, like what a quick fall it was from this is the new DC universe, right? This is phase 1 to not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think he thought if he just kept saying it, and I do think he genuinely thought he made the superhero movie he wanted to see. It was different from a Marvel movie in a lot of ways. I give it, whatever credit that deserves. But it just, the trailers are coming out, and I feel like I can get a feel for how excited people are about stuff coming out, and no one wanted to see this movie. It was like, I'll go see it out of obligation for a few people, but I certainly, even if I was still going to the theater a whole lot, I had no intention of getting off my ass. I was like, this isn't, you watch it on HBO Max movie if ever there was one. And I think
part of the problem is that, The Rock kind of started to believe his own hype, because for a few years there, he got this reputation of being like, he would come into a franchise and all of a sudden, the numbers would go up, right? The popularity of the franchise would go up. And that was the case with Fast and Furious. It was the case with Jumanji, right? But I think that this really kind of showed, but then that also ignores that in the interim, there were a whole bunch of other movies that came out that weren't connected to any kind of franchise, that didn't do that great, like, Skyscraper.
I was going to say Skyscraper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that CIA one? Central Intelligence with
Rampage.
Kevin Hart. Rampage. Yeah. Rampage. Yeah. I think
Baywatch was an amazing flop.
I'm sorry.
Baywatch.
Oh, Baywatch. Yeah. Right. So, I think that, he kind of like believed his own hype, that he was like, yeah, I'm going to come into this franchise and I'm just going to take over like I have with all these other things. And, I think that with Fast and Furious, I think he definitely did enhance the Fast and Furious movies for a couple of entries, but then people weren't going to Fast and Furious movies to see just The Rock. And that's obvious when you look at like the reception for Hobbs and Shaw, right? Which is just The Rock and Jason Statham doing a buddy, cop thing, which didn't really land. And that's actually the kind of the closest in terms of box office performance in recent years to how Black Adam did. And the other thing I forgot to mention was in this whole, post-release drama was what happened with Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
Right. Where you had all the Snyder fans rejoicing because Henry Cavill came back for a 30-second cameo. Henry Cavill comes out on his official social medias and he's like, I am officially back as Superman after years of speculation that, there must be some kind of, negotiation snafu or WB doesn't want him back or something. They never could seem to get him back for anything. He has a cameo, Superman rather has a cameo at the end of Shazam, but they did it with a stunt double where you can't see his face. Right. And it's the same way at the end of Peacemaker, right? And Peacemaker, Superman is in silhouette. Right. And everybody's speculating, why isn't Henry Cavill coming back? And he finally comes out. He's like, I'm officially back. And I remember he gave an interview or two where he's like, yeah, Man of Steel 2 is a go. Right. And then just weeks later, at the same time they canceled Black Adam 2. By the way, we also have to mention we're not going to bring Henry Cavill back. And what a bummer for those fans, and what a roller coaster that was.
Well, I mean, I don't, like I was saying at the beginning, I don't have a whole lot emotionally invested in all of this, but I felt horrible for Henry Cavill at that.
Yeah, absolutely. He seemed like he really did want to come back. He seemed like he was excited about it and he cared about the character. And every interview I've seen him give post Batman v Superman indicates that he knows that the way that the character was presented in those movies is not right. He knows. Yeah. And that he was hopeful for a chance to finally get to present Superman in a truer way. And to see that, here we have the opportunity and there's this bright future, right? And I'm like, man, maybe even though I didn't like the movie that much, maybe I should thank The Rock for bringing back Superman, right? And no.
Yeah, it was embarrassing just for everybody. And you're just like, dude, Dwayne, stop talking.
I was really surprised that people are coming out and making these announcements without having anything signed, apparently.
My first indication that nothing was actually put together was someone, when Disenchanted came out, someone asked Amy Adams about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. She was like, I remember that.
Yeah. No one's talked to me. I don't know what's going on. Good luck to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, y'all don't have Amy Adams locked down. Oh, this ain't happening.
It's not happening. Yeah.
The other thing I remember Dwayne Johnson doing was comparing in the kind of right before everything got cut off, was him comparing the numbers to A24 movie numbers and going, as an A24 movie, we're more like an A24 movie than a Marvel movie, which I was like, what world is that true? But
that's quite a reach.
Yeah, but he was like, we're doing great for an A24 movie. We're like a little indie feature. I was like, oh my God, like who told you that, and how did your brain process that as a thing to repeat to the public?
I think here's what I think. I think The Rock is like many celebrities who surround themselves with yes men. And so he's what I assume is The Rock is in a bubble of his own entourage, right? And they tell him stuff that he wants to hear. And instead of giving him bad news about the box office performance of his movie that he's invested all, years of energy and time and promotion into, instead they're going to tell him bullshit like, oh, it's doing better than an A24 movie. That's what I have to assume.
Yeah.
Somebody said that to him to cheer him up. and he repeated it.
I mean, the gross on this was something like, or worldwide, was something like 350 million or something like that. Like, it was a, Ant-Man level take, which,
It's a modest hit if your budget isn't 200 million.
Yeah. I don't feel bad for anyone involved. The movie is what it was. They all should have known what they're signing on for. Hopefully Pierce Brosnan gets to spend many more summers in wherever he wants to on the strength of whatever he got paid. But it was just such a weird movie watching it with I'm way past the point where I care about whether they're being faithful to the comics or not. Sometimes that's a good idea, sometimes it's not. But it was a joyless watch of stuff that I'm familiar with, totally confused as to how anyone was supposed to understand this unless they actually knew DC Comics. And then kind of coming to that point of, oh, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters except for The Rock's ego.
The Rock looks cool.
Yeah.
The Rock looks badass. That's what I took away from it.
And there's a few little bits of poetry in here that totally get run over by a Mack truck of like, he never touches the earth until he finally decides he's going to go ahead and get his like powers removed. That's the first time he lowers himself to the ground and walks again.
Oh, I actually didn't notice that.
He's hovering like a goon through most of the movie. And it's just like, there's some things in there that you're like, this could have been okay. This could have been really interesting. You aggressively chose to make this a video game.
Oh, absolutely a video game. I on the chose to give up his powers thing. I guess that's actually a cool call out that you noticed. But the whole thing that I was noticing was how much money they're spending to keep him alive. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, no, they would just put a bullet in this guy's head.
Yeah. Well, and I also felt a little bad for James Gunn's wife, whose name, unfortunately, I can't remember in the moment. I'm not going to look it up, but her popping up for 10 seconds, being given the worst dialogue of the whole movie. And that's in a movie with horrible dialogue.
Oh, is she like the prison warden?
Yeah. And then like, and I'm like, well, she got a paycheck, good for her. But that whole scene, I was like, wait, they have the technology to keep water from like flowing into a room at the bottom of the ocean. Like the DC universe is weird in this movie. It's just fucking weird with no explanation. You have, what looks like your run-of-the-mill Middle Eastern fucked up country, and we're spending our resources apparently on not caring about the fact that is a fucking keg of dynamite over there that we could apparently easily clean up in about 20 minutes. And we're building fucking underwater bases to house people who should be dead. Like,
again, I'm almost tempted to think that's the intentional critique, right? Like look at the disparity between what we have and what they have, right? We're building
in no way was that intentional.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and then there's this horrible thing of Dr. Fate, like when they plunge into the water to go down there, was like, why is it underwater?
Because it looks cool and they haven't done anything underwater yet.
Right. In no way will Aquaman notice this is here. He goes, oh, it's beautiful. And then they just show murk. It's just murk. There's nothing outside the windows except for light against murk. And I was just like, you didn't even need that line in there. Does he have a line count that he had to have in the movie? Like it was like the editing on it was just strange in some ways, but
I guess I'm not really surprised by that anymore. When the landscape of a very heavily CGI movie is just nothing.
Yeah,
because I just sort of expect it now. I I feel like I see so many movies, especially CGI heavy movies, that it's just the screen filled with smooth nothingness, just pixels that look like somebody went to Photoshop and just did a blur effect on the entire thing,
Yeah. I don't know. It's I mean, who knows what happened in the editing? Who knows what happened, at various points in this movie. You're right about the repetition of the fights with Hawkman, and the fact that Hawkman's entire job is apparently just to be an asshole and wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like, who? I guess
that was a
everyone
very
wants a
thankless
paycheck,
role.
and yeah, it was just strange. And then the having wait, the JSA is apparently bringing on 2 untrained people to go into a war zone. Make it make sense in some way, in some little tiny way. I don't know.
On the other hand, though, I do think that I feel like they could have made the same movie with a smaller budget, and they could have had like a small following, because I know that from my kid having the sleepover, multiple 8-year-olds think this is the best movie made last year.
Well, yeah, because it feels like Halo.
Yeah. It's just scene after scene of like, whoa, that's cool,
Yeah. And I in some ways I totally get that. And had it not been so completely murdery, I'd be like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, absolutely, this is for 8-year-olds. But we haven't even talked about the fact that when he shows up, they play Painted Black, which is going to be the new thing I call out.
Oh, that's right. I had just listened to your Addams Family podcast, and you had this tirade about, if you think that it's time to put Painted Black in your movie, you need to, question where your life has led you, or something like that. Question where your choices have led you. And so I immediately typed out, as soon as I heard that, I was like, let me know when you watch Black Adam. I just want to hear your reaction to that first song they play when he wakes up.
I mean, and they got the Stones version. That was the crazy thing. Like, that's the one that costs money. It's not having someone play it on cello.
No expense was spared on this movie, Ryan.
No expense was spared, except for apparently in the script writing stage. And yeah, anyway, I mean, no,
but that's the point, though. I think I think no expense was spared there either. I think this is 100% the movie that The Rock wanted to make.
Yeah. And to that point, it's a very good thing that this is not the start of the new phase of the new DC.
Correct.
I'm bummed about some of the stuff that's going on. I heard Doom Patrol yesterday. That Doom Patrol is canceled.
Yeah.
I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I enjoyed it. But I mean, the movies, absolutely, they need to just, we're done patching this leaky ass house. Like, it needs to just get plowed under, and something new needs to get built on that space.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. It's kind of like watching the DC universe movies. It's kind of been like watching a season of Smallville, where it's like this whole thing is just wrong. But every once in a while, there's a good episode, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's not so bad. I'll keep watching. That was kind of my experience for 10 years of watching Smallville, and that's kind of been how it's been watching the DC movies, where it's like, Batman v Superman, absolute garbage. But then you'll watch, and the Suicide Squad came out in quick succession, or the first Suicide Squad, absolute garbage. But then Wonder Woman, right? Yeah. Wonder Woman's pretty good. One that
everyone was sure was going to suck.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, maybe this can work. No, we can do it. We can do it, guys. And then Justice League, and it's like, oh, right, okay, no, not so great. I mean, the problem is, Superman really is the center of the DC universe, and if you fuck up Superman, which they did, they fucked him up hard, and they doubled down. They had a chance with After Man of Steel to fix it, and they did not fix it. If you fuck that up, kind of like everything else. I mean, it doesn't matter. Eventually, it's just going to fall in on itself.
Yeah, I think that's true with the comics as well. And I think that DC is constantly having to learn that lesson about itself, which seems self-evident, but I feel like DC's actually the comics are on fairly good ground right now because they're trying to keep Superman afloat and normal. They're even giving him a secret identity back right now. But they're it if you want to make this big statement about him being the darkness and that's somehow super helpful, again, you just spent 10 years of having Superman snap necks and all this, everyone being morally compromised and all this other shit. And I know people liked Aquaman, but Aquaman basically has all the same problems as Man of Steel, except it's underwater. And so it feels like less impactful when you're watching everyone in Atlantis get murdered.
Aquaman, however, unlike Black Adam, is fun. For me, at least. I have fun watching Aquaman. I think it's weird enough, and it has that tongue-in-cheek quality that I was talking about, that I can enjoy it on that level, despite it not really being Aquaman.
Yeah, and I think Dwayne Johnson very much was like, I'm not going to be winky about this. We're not going to we're not going to have Momoa being the whoa dude, Black Adam. And I think they had this idea that everyone else would be cracking wise, and he, it'll be this endearing thing that Black Adam's kind of at the middle of it. He gets it, but he doesn't participate. But that didn't work because everyone else is just there to be less cool than him. It's a deeply, deeply flawed movie. And I know there's got to be, Black Adam 457 on Twitter out there, like losing their mind, that they'll never see another one of these. But, I don't think that I think the character itself, you can bring it back as part of the Shazam movies if those keep going, which I doubt. But it's also going to be really interesting watching these last movies kind of fart out into the universe at this point. Like WB has to put these things out, even as
we've spent all this money on it. We got to release it.
Yeah, I mean they punted on the Flash movie for over a year at this point. That thing.
I'm looking forward to the second Shazam movie because I really liked the first Shazam movie.
I was warm to it. I liked it. Okay, it wasn't my favorite thing, but.
It could have been improved by adding Black Adam, I would say.
It would have made way more sense to be Black Adam.
Totally more sense, yeah.
Yeah. I am looking forward to Helen Mirren beating up Shazam. I think that's hilarious. But but there's a whole other Aquaman movie coming that has absolutely no point now in existing. Which is hilarious.
I think that another thing that the whole Black Adam, movie saga proves is that it's a better idea not to have a superhero movie with a movie star, right?
I couldn't agree more. That whole star system thing, when people all wanted Tom Cruise as Iron Man, I was like, you guys have no idea what you're saying. You absolutely do not want that as Iron Man, because Tom Cruise doesn't give a shit who Iron Man is. Tom Cruise, I mean, I know everybody loves Tom Cruise again, but dude makes things that Tom Cruise wants to make. He didn't want to go be a part of a huge machine. The machine is Tom Cruise.
Well, and it's the same case with The Rock and Black Adam, I think.
Yeah.
That he made the movie he wanted to make, and he's at a level that the studio couldn't really say no if they wanted to keep him. And they wanted to keep him because they know that the DC universe at that time was kind of, not doing great. They needed something to give it a shot in the arm. They thought maybe The Rock would be the thing. But when you make a mega budget movie that's already going to be a mega budget movie, and then you add in a star who's going to demand a huge salary or huge back end on that movie, that just that just makes everything, it just raises the stakes even higher, you know. It's just not, it's not great. I would have loved to see in the Shazam movie if they had a unknown Middle Eastern actor play Black Adam, and maybe he would have been cool, and maybe he would have like,
it could have been a star-making turn.
Right, exactly. And then you could, and then have a spin-off happen the old-fashioned way, where it's like, you know, it's driven by the fan, you know, response. It's driven kind of, you know, in a grassroots kind of way, like the audience supports it, you know, and it doesn't feel forced like this.
I should say, like, that's part of why the story worked in the comics, was like everybody already knew who Black Adam was.
Yeah.
Like, and so saying, well, let's take this character who we know what he's about, and this is actually giving him kind of this Doctor Doom like level of unfortunate nobility in what he's doing, and like you can kind of get it. It's the same reason a lot of the Marvel villains are so interesting, right? And it may not be what you think should happen, but you at least can see that POV. This has just starts from jump of like, oh, back in the day there were Vikings apparently in Kahndaq beating people up and digging for unobtainium, which what? And it's like, I think you guys should be worried about agriculture is what you should be worried about. That said, I know we have pyramids, so I know we didn't always use our energy for agriculture. But there was just nothing there. You're just starting, and it's something that I think comic adapted movies have to learn over and over. And frankly, the fans do too, because people are constantly saying no more origin stories. I'm like, if you don't know where the person came from,
then you won't care.
The rest of it's just a wizard flying around.
Yeah. And especially in a magic-based character too, you know, like this one.
Yeah, that's really how you get Dr. Fate in this movie, where it's like, I don't know.
Sure. But yeah, that's why it seems so odd to me when he's like, even I can't contain him. And he does like this really impressive shit. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can, dude.
Yeah. Anyway, we have probably talked for an hour. I have no idea how long we've been talking about fucking Black Adam here. But if you enjoyed Black Adam, I guess is the thing I'd want to like talk back to us. What was great about Black Adam? Go ahead and let us know. Maybe we're missing something. Maybe Stuart's like sneaking suspicion this movie was on about something else and we just missed it is correct. Maybe it's all about wearing a dingy Shazam suit around. I let me know. Did you have deep feelings for what was happening in the movie? Is Cyclone your favorite superhero? All of these are the things we want to hear about. The other thing I would say is, I know I said this on the Addams Family, maybe some other podcast, I can't remember. I think it's actually on the unreleased so far Jaws 3 podcast. Please share the podcast, like it and subscribe it and do all the things. We're not going to stop doing it, but it would be more fun if we knew like more people were listening and people like responded and talked back at us. And you know, we're more than happy to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, or you think like, oh, you guys got to hear these two morons talk about Black Adam for an hour and a half, share it. Share all that. You know, that's what we're here for. Anyway, Stuart, any final thoughts on any of this?
Just telling the man in black sent you.
I just think I see a red door and I want it painted black. All right. Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.
Painted black, no colors anymore. about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.